Hello, and welcome back to yet another exciting week on the stock market. In this week's episode, I will address the question, why did Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway sell most of its Goldman Sachs stocks? And then we will be looking into some other financial news. And finally, we will take a look at my portfolio and see what has happened within the week. So let's start by addressing the question, why did Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway sell most of its Goldman Sachs stocks? As of yesterday, I read an article in the Financial Times, and then I went on and asked around in the community to investigate why Warren Buffett sold all these stocks. It was more than 10 million Goldman Sachs stocks, which Berkshire Hathaway has sold in the first quarter, bringing it up to more than 86% of their holding in Goldman Sachs. And it's no secret that Warren Buffett likes financial stocks. He has a lot of that in his portfolio. But why particularly does it have to be Goldman he's selling? Why is it not Bank of America or Wells Fargo or JP Morgan? Why is it such a big stake in specifically Goldman? So I received a lot of different feedback on this question. A lot of people said, well, it's simply just because he's old and losing his edge. Then there were some people saying it's because he is afraid of negative interest rates, but none of this explains why it has to be Goldman he's selling, because negative interest rates in general is bad for banking business. It makes it hard for them to earn anything. That is not something which is particularly tied to Goldman. And I guess the people who said that he's afraid of negative interest rates didn't really pay much attention to the meeting from the Federal Reserve within the week, where they announced that the interest rate is going to be between 0 and 0.25 for the foreseeable future. How long is of course still uncertain, but they said that it is going to be for a while. There were of course also someone who pointed out that maybe he sold due to a bad first quarter result, but every one of us who has just looked at The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham and understands that Warren Buffett is a big believer in this, knows that he is not selling due to one bad quarter. If he's deciding to sell, that means that he has lost faith in the company, that he do not believe in it for the foreseeable future. So what is he seeing which the rest of us aren't? So after I have received these different theories for why he should have sold Goldman, and I was not really seeing a smoking gun here, I still need a really good argument for why it has to be specifically Goldman and not just banks in a broader perspective. Somebody shared this link with me. I will of course include it in the description below. So if we just read the headlines, whistleblower, Wall Street has engaged in widespread manipulation of mortgage funds. And if we just read a little further in the article, securities that contains loans for properties like hotel and office buildings have inflated profits, the whistleblower claims. As the pandemic hammers the economy, that could increase the chances of other mortgages collapse. So if the whistleblower is correct, that means that collateralized loan obligations, CLOs, and commercial mortgage-backed securities, CMBS, has been inflated. You do not have to understand the concept of CLOs and CMBS. I will of course include a link in the description in case you want to know more. But what you need to understand is, basically you're lending out money to someone who should never have received the loan in the first place. Haven't we heard this before? This sounds an awful lot like what we heard back in 2008 and 2009, where it was mortgage-backed securities, meaning you and I who were able to get a loan for a house, and then those loans had a bad credit rating, then they were pooled together, so they got a better credit rating, meaning that we were effectively capable of borrowing more than we should have been allowed to in the first place. And what did that lead to? That led to a lot of defaults, a lot of very big losses, and government bailout. So what does all of this has to do with Goldman Sachs? So apparently Goldman Sachs is the biggest issuer of commercial mortgage-backed securities. And if that holds true, then I really do understand why Warren Buffett is selling his more than 10 million shares in Goldman Sachs. Because if you are left holding this when you know this pandemic will have a negative impact on the real estate prices, then you know that there will be very big losses, since the likelihood of a loss is increased due to the pandemic. The likelihood of a loss is also increased because the CMBS has been inflated, and when there is a loss, the loss is bigger since it is inflated. So then of course it is time to get out, if this whistleblower is actually correct. But feel free to comment here if you know something which I haven't presented. I'm really curious to know more about this sell. Other financial news. Goldman fears a new drop in the stock market. So previously Goldman announced that 23rd of March would be the bottom in the stock market for this pandemic for the S&P 500. Now they are still holding on to the year-end results, saying they expect the market to be around 3,000, but they expect that when we open up the economy, that the virus will spread more and that people will be scared, and hence they think the stock market will drop heavily again, as much as 18% from the current level. So that covered the financial news for this week. I was really interested when I saw that article in the Financial Times, and I was really curious to figure out why exactly Warren Buffett decided to sell Goldman Sachs, or at least try to understand why he did it. So when I saw that link to the whistleblower article, I was really blown away, because in my mind that is the smoking gun for why he decided to sell. So if that is correct, then we are truly in for a severe drop again. But this is of course still pure speculation. I can't be completely wrong here, but at least I thought it was interesting. So now let's go and take a closer look at my portfolio and see what has happened within the week. So the first thing we notice is, since there was a red circle for this week's episode, we know that my portfolio is down in value. When we then look to the value, we can see that I am down 1,300. That is actually stretching it a bit, since I have invested $500 within the week. So I'm actually down 1,800 for the week. And those 500 went into Realty Income Corp, so I now have $1,000 invested there, and the stock has dropped a little more in value compared with last week. So the $500 which I have invested into Realty Income Corp is a mixture of dividends and fresh capital, since I have received a dividend from Synchrony Financials and General Dynamics. Those add up to around $36, bringing the total dividends for May so far up to $72.75. And while we are on the topic of dividends, I have received this email saying 3M declares a dividend which is in line with previous, so they are at least continuing to pay. Prudential Financials has also declared a dividend which is in line with previous. International Paper is declaring a dividend which is in line with previous. And Realty Income Corp is declaring a dividend which is in line with previous. And then, unfortunately, Tanker Factory suspends its dividends. So the dividend, which will be payable 15th of May, means Friday, will still go as scheduled, so I am supposed to receive that tomorrow, but then they will suspend the dividend going forward. This makes perfect sense when you look to the value which is currently at, since they would be yielding around 23%, so they are really struggling, hence they are forced to suspend the dividends for now. So that concludes yet another exciting week on the stock market, and please feel free to comment on Warren Buffett's sell of his Goldman Sachs stocks, because I would really like to know more here. I'm quite curious to see whether or not you think that my analysis is correct, or that I am completely misleading you. So if you, for instance, have more recent data on who is the biggest commercial mortgage-backed securities issuer or collateralized loan obligations issuer, because when I did my research, I couldn't find any numbers which was newer than 2017, and honestly, to me, that is a bit misleading. So if you have some newer data, then please feel free to share that. And in general, if you have some questions or you would like to add a comment, then as always, feel free to comment, like and subscribe. And until I see you next Sunday, bye!